In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown on some of the things you're going to want to watch out for if you're shopping to buy a 5th generation Chevrolet Corvette. So stick around. So this is my 2002 Corvette that I just bought 3 months ago down in Tampa, Florida. I found it at a Honda dealership. It turned out to be a one-owner car, spent its whole life in Florida. I got on a plane from Detroit, Michigan and flew down and drove it 1,200 miles home. That story is up on my YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description below in case it's something you want to check out. This is actually the third C5 between my wife and I that we have owned. Prior to this, I had a 2000 convertible, which unfortunately met an untimely death at Waterford Hills Racetrack back in 2018. That story's up on my channel as well. And then in 2003, my wife bought a brand new 2003 coupe with all the options, and we kept that car until 2012 and put 120,000 miles on it. So I have a lot of experience with these cars. And so today I'm going to go through and give you a few tips and tricks of things to look out for if you're shopping to buy one. Now, I want to say up front, I'm not a mechanic, so I'm not going to get into a lot of detail under the hood. There are other videos out there. CNS Corvettes, for example, out of Sarasota, Florida, has got some good videos on the C5. I'd recommend you check out their content. But I will go through both outside and inside the car with some of the things that I've experienced over the years that you might want to look out for. The other thing is I always suggest that you hire someone to do a pre-purchase inspection, a professional mechanic, somebody who can look it up, maybe somebody who can put it up on a lift and check the undercarriage, suspension, all those sorts of things that I won't be able to do in this video today. Having said that, let's get started with the exterior of the car. One of the steps I always do when I go look at a vehicle is I begin by looking at the gaps on the body panels. I like to run my fingers along these gaps to see whether they are consistent, whether they pinch at a point, that sort of thing. So for example, if you look closely at this quarter panel, you'll see it kind of pinches and bulges out right here, which would indicate to me this front end has been bumped at some point in time. You're going to want to pay special attention underneath the front of the vehicle. So I'm going to get down here and show you that this is a common place where you will find a lot of scrapes on the underside here, where people have put it over parking blocks and that sort of thing. You want to check this. This is a panel that is designed to get bumped and that sort of thing, but you're going to want to look for cracks. That's not a too difficult part to get and replace on a C5. But you also want to look here. You can see this brace here has been scraped a number of times. Of course, this car has 101,000 miles on it, so that's not unusual. There's not a lot of scrapes on the underside. I see some here because this front end has been repainted at some point in time. Otherwise, with 100,000 miles, you'd be seeing a lot more stone chips and problems like that on the hood. All right, I have flipped the camera on my phone here, and I want to show you underneath the car. And as I look underneath the car, you'll notice, you can see where it is, I mean, it's dirty, but it's also been scraped along this edge here. You can see there's where you've got some damage, where somebody ran over something. And so that is a common thing to look out for on these cars as well. As you go around and inspect the paint on the car, there are a couple of other areas to kind of keep an eye open for. So for example, look on my mirror here. You can see probably pulling out of a garage. Somebody bumped it against the garage on their way out. And then I'm going to come around to the other side and show you another potential problem to look out for. And that is, you got to watch that you don't have damage in the clear coat. So for example, I'm going to zoom in and show you. I've got a spot right here above this driver's rear wheel where I've got damage to the clear coat. Now let's talk about wheels and tires. Looking at wheels, the obvious thing is you're looking for road rash. Here I've got some on the rim where the car clearly has hit a curb at some point in its life. You'll also notice that I'm missing a couple of covers over these two lug nuts. And then I look at the tires, and I want to look at the make and model. Are they uniform? Are the two fronts the same? Are the two rears the same? Preferably, it's the same make and model on all four wheels. You want to look at the tread depth, but also you want to look at the size. Like these are 245 45 R17s, which is a proper size for a C5 Corvette front wheel. And so the other thing is you want to look at the date code. How old are these tires that you're looking at? So what you're looking for is the DOT, which is Department of Transportation. And then if you scan all the way down to the last 4 digits, you'll see it says 2118, which indicates these were manufactured the 21st week of 2018. So this is a 6-year-old tire. Now, most tire manufacturers will tell you that they're good for 6 or 7 years, so I'm getting towards the end of the useful life. And so when you get to 5, 6, 7-year-old tires, you're going to want to start looking at the sidewalls. Is there any cracking or anything that indicate that you're getting a little dry rot? That is a telltale sign you need to replace those tires. And then while I'm here, if the car has not been driven and the brakes are not hot, please don't try this if you've been driving the car. I like to run my finger across the brake disc, and I want to make sure it's smooth, that there's no grooves developing, which might indicate it's going to need a brake job. Okay, let's talk about headlights. The C5 Generation uses pop-up headlights, and so one of the things you're going to want to check, of course, is that the headlights are working. You're going to want to turn them on, make sure they come up. You want to make sure they're coming up uniform, that they're not going at a different speed. You're also listening very carefully to see whether they have any grinding noises to them, because a grinding noise would indicate that the plastic gears that they originally came with are having a problem, and you're likely going to have to repair that if you purchase the vehicle. A common failure point in a C5 is weather stripping and leaks. And so you're going to want to inspect this rubber weather stripping that goes up the front windshield. You're going to inspect it across the top. Is it cracking, breaking up? Are there pieces falling off or anything that might indicate a leak? Same back here. Follow this up and follow it all the way across. Now, when you looking back, unlike a C4 Generation, this glass does not open. So it's unlikely you'll have problems with this weather stripping here, but I would still open the back and inspect here and see if you have any problems here, because that is a potential leak point. And then for the target top, you're going to want to inspect the rubber stripping on the target top. If you have a convertible, same thing. Follow that weather stripping around and see what kind of condition it's in. There are logos on the front and the back of the vehicle, and the one on the front has a tendency to get beat up badly by stones and things on the road kicking up and hitting it. Now you can see this one looks brand new because it is brand new. If it is bad, don't worry about it. They're 27 bucks on eBay. You use a little fishing line to string underneath the old one, and you can pop the old one off and put the new one on, and it'll look as good as new. While I'm looking at the outside of the car, one of the things that I noticed as I walked around is this is your heads-up display. And you'll notice there is a plastic bezel that goes around your heads-up display, and as you can see, I have a crack in mine. And so a replacement bezel can be bought. They're not very expensive. Be careful which one you buy, because if you buy the standard one, it has little plastic pins that go down, so you really have to pull the dash in order to put it in. But I have seen that there is an aftermarket one you can buy that basically just has adhesive tape around it, and you can actually stick it right over the old one and not have to worry about taking the old one out. Let's talk about under the hood. Under the hood, the most important thing, other than the usual, where you're going to want to check oil levels and what the oil consistency feels like. If there's a date code on the battery, you want to see how old the battery is. But on a C5 Corvette, a common failure point is something called the Harmonic Balancer. This is a large pulley wheel on the front bottom of the engine that drives the belts, and it has a tendency with the Chevy OEM Harmonic Balancers, it will wobble. It'll start, when it's running, it'll start to go back and forth. So put the car in park, start the engine, let it sit at idle, walk around to the passenger side, because the easiest way to see the Harmonic Balancer is to look through this opening right here and look down to where that belt goes down around the large pulley at the bottom. And you want to see, is it running smoothly or is it wobbling back and forth? Because if it's wobbling, it's time to replace it. And if you have a professional shop do the job, you could end up spending as much as $1,200 by the time you're done, because you're not just replacing the Harmonic Balancer, you're likely also replacing the belt. You may have to replace tensioners. You may want to pin the new Harmonic Balancer. there's a lot of things that go into that project. And I had that done on my C6 generation, my 2007 Corvette, because this was a common failure point both with the C5 generation and the C6. So make sure when you're looking at the car to inspect the harmonic balancer. Now let's talk about the interior of the car. As is true with any used car that you're looking to buy, you want to take the time and go through all the controls and everything in the automobile to make sure there aren't any problems. So for example, you want to check out the stereo system. And that means not just volume and tuning controls, but AM, FM, as the pre-programmed station's working, the seek button. If it has a CD or cassette player, bring one along with you so that you can check that sort of thing. You want to check the climate control system. Is it working? You know, in this case, it's got a dual climate control. Is it working driver and passenger side? Is air conditioning working? Is heater working? That sort of thing. In the case of this car, when I bought it, I flew down to Florida and discovered the driver's window wouldn't go down. And so I had to go on eBay Motors and buy myself a window regulator, and when I got home I had to replace that. At the same time I had to replace the master control switch on the door panel here because it gets so old, and having been a Florida car its entire life, I knew that I was going to break that the moment I tried to pop it out, and sure enough I did. And so for 20 bucks I just bought another one. So you want to check your power windows, your power mirrors. You want to check it on both driver and passenger side. Take the time to go through everything and make sure that you're confident that everything is working. And if you find things that aren't working, well, then that gives you another negotiating point as far as the purchase price of the automobile. A common thing you're going to want to take a look at would be the driver's seat. And so there are various wear points. This side bolster gets a lot of abuse over the years, and so it's common that you're going to see wear and cracking here. The most common failure point is actually this seam right here has a tendency to split. Now in this case, these seats had been redone by the previous owner, and so you're not seeing that on this car, but that is common for C5 Corvettes. And then it is quite common that you are going to see wear here on this panel where people have dragged their feet in and out of the car. And you'll also see that wear on the speaker panel here in the door is where people have kicked it with their feet, getting in and out of the automobile. You should take the time to inspect all the interior plastics. You're looking, is there anything cracked, broken, missing? You know, how is this bezel doing, for example? As I pan around here behind the steering wheel, it's quite common for this piece, this little bezel that goes around the ignition could be missing. This cover over the ambient air temperature sometimes is missing in C5s. So you want to look for that. And so check the passenger side as well. Open the glove box, make sure the glove box latch is working. I would go through and check all of those things. One of the things that I didn't notice till I got home was the fact that this top panel is loose. And I think what the problem is, as I look underneath here, is there's a couple of screws missing that holds this in place. And so that's why you have to pay special attention to every little piece inside the car, because you never know what you're going to find. When you go and drive the car, if you accelerate fast or you brake hard and you find that the seat kind of shifts forward and back a little bit, you're going to need a seat track repair, and that is something I discovered with this car. Runs about a little less than 70 bucks. And that will fix that problem. One of the things that I discovered in inspecting this car was here I'm on the passenger side, and of course you have your power seat controls and they work, and you see the plastic panel that covers here. But when I came around to the driver's side of the car, what I discovered was when the seat was redone, it was not put back on the driver's seat. And so looking underneath the seat, there is the controls. And yes, it does work. But for some reason, they Velcroed it to the floor underneath the driver's seat instead of mounting it back where it belongs. So that's something I'm going to have to address. When you first start the car up, you want to pay special attention to the DIC, or Driver Information Center, which is this area here that you see below the gauges. And that is going to give you information if there's any issues or problems that come up. So for example, I'm going to start the car. And you'll notice I've got a service tire monitoring system. And I'm going to hit the reset button. And it'll show you that I have a driver's front that is not registering a pressure. And so that is something that I'll have to get replaced. In fact, when I bought it, the passenger front one wasn't working, and I've already replaced that one. And then a week later, the driver's front one now has failed, and so I have to replace that one as well. Now, you may have noticed that I have a check engine light that's on, as you can see right there. So, when I go to look at a car, I always bring an OBD2 code reader that I plug in under the dash in order to pull the code and Google it and find out what the problem is. But in this case, Chevrolet provided the code reading feature in the driver information center, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you now. So, I'm going to shut the car off. You put the key in the ignition, you turn it to the on position, and whatever messages come up on your display, you're going to want to hit reset and make them go away. Reset button, by the way, is down here at the bottom on this right-hand side. So right now, there's nothing coming up. Now, there's going to be a message going to come up briefly about you have to brake before you shift. I'm going to hit reset again. Now, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hold down the options button, and I'm going to hit fuel 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there you go. Now, it is going to cycle through all the codes and show you codes in each one of the categories. So BCM has no codes. SDM has no codes. If it has an H on the right-hand side, which you see there, that's telling you that that's a historical code. It's something that happened at some point in the past of this car, but it's not a current problem. If it's a current issue, you'll see a C come up. And so this goes through all the different areas of the car and gives you, in this case, I got a bunch of codes coming up. And I think these have to do with the fact at some point in time the battery was disconnected, and so there's a bunch of codes that are going to come up. Eventually it'll cycle back around, and it is going to show you this code, which is the PCM, and it's a P0410, and it's called a secondary air pump system. It's an emissions feature where it has a little air pump just in front of the driver's front wheel. It pumps air into the exhaust manifold. It's about lowering the emissions level when you start the car. So it's a pump that only runs for a short period of time, and then it shuts off. But it tripped this code when I bought the car, and I had my code reader with me. And so I was able to discover what the problem was, realized it was not going to deter me from my 1,200-mile trip back to Michigan, and so I just went on my way. But now I've got a secondary air pump system that I'm going to have to deal with to try and figure out what the problem is. And that is my overview of what to watch out for if you're shopping to buy a C5 Generation Chevrolet Corvette. For those of you watching this video who might be C5 owners or past owners, drop me a comment below. Did I forget anything you think I should have included in this video? My name is Tom Stroup. You've been watching Find the Right Road. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time.